Hi, I'm Charlotte, and you're watching The Ugly Atheist. Today's episode, we are going to explore the idea, are animals religious, and what that might mean for humanity and our own sense of religion. What prompted this topic for today is just the many observations over the decades of how animals are seen responding to various natural phenomenon. For example, Jane Goodall has, as you know, she is the primatologist, a very famous primatologist, and she has observed when chimpanzees encounter something like a grand waterfall, how they are just in utter amazement at it. They make a lot of the same facial expressions that we would make when we encounter something that's so large and so impressive and so loud. It's a fully immersive experience. For example, you can imagine the feeling you'd get if you were to go scuba diving with whales, if you see the Northern Lights in person, or the Pacific Ocean for the first time, or any number of amazing things that are just so awe-inspiring that a lot of us can qualify that as a spiritual experience because we don't often have words to describe it. So Jane Goodall observed this phenomenon with chimpanzees, and they start to go into kind of a slow swaying dance when they encounter this waterfall, and they're just fully immersed in it. Elephants, similarly, there was I don't know who the elephantologist was. I don't even know if that's the proper word for that line of study. But they similarly, when they are underneath a full moon, they pick up branches and they likewise go into kind of a slow dance where they wave the branches towards the moonlight, all seemingly in some kind of trance. Not to mention how a lot of these more intelligent animals seem to have some kind of ritual surrounding the death of family or loved ones as well. Crows, for example, have been seen constructing sort of a wreath type structure that they place near the bodies of their deceased. Elephants and chimps will come and visit the graves of their dead, and just stand in silence. And we can easily write off these kinds of behaviors as just being instinctive, because they don't quite understand what death is. And I don't know if that might be kind of short-sighted because we don't really know what's going on, but we do know that if these kinds of emotions and experiences happen in us, a simple primate, then I don't think that it's quite a stretch to surmise that these kinds of experiences happen with other animals as well. What exactly is the spiritual experience when we are in awe of something? When the hairs in our arms and the back of our heads stand up on end, when we encounter something that's just so absolutely impressive. We have, fortunately, some fMRI studies that look into what exactly is going on in the brain when we have these awe-inspiring moments, or when we meditate or have a spiritual experience. And what we notice is that it's very similar to the fight or flight response, in which blood is diverted away from our frontal lobes, our frontal cortex, and towards the back of our brains, where we have our vision processing center, our auditory processing center on the temporal part, and a number of other regions, our occipital, parietal regions of our brain, are used in the fight or flight response. But it's interesting that is the reaction we have to seeing something so grand. And the hypothesis I've heard is that it's when, for example, if a cat sees something that frightens it and the hairs on its back stand up and it tries to make itself larger to face this potential threat. And the hypothesis is that that's what's going on in us and other animals. When we encounter something that's so large and so impressive, we feel afraid of it, but absolutely enamored by it at the same time. Like when you encounter a waterfall that is so grand and so loud, and it encapsulates or it engages all of our senses at the same time, then of course blood flow is going to move away from the frontal lobes and concentrate in the back of our brain. So we have these momentary bouts of a shift in our consciousness, and you can kind of replicate this feeling to some degree if you've ever been driving on the freeway on a bright sunny day and you have your windows rolled down, and you can try this, and then you approach a tunnel and you enter a tunnel in the road, and all of a sudden it not only does it get dark, but the sound changes completely because it's echoing. I think it gets louder. It gets echoing off the walls of the tunnel, and for a brief moment you can some people can feel a bit of this surreal feeling where your eyes are trying to adjust to the darkness. So a lot of the blood is being diverted from your frontal cortex, where you are. The frontal cortex, as you know, is responsible for our decision making, future planning, and logical, rational thought and self-control. So a lot of the blood momentarily moves away from those areas and towards the fight or flight part of our brain, which is in the back, the opposite side of our brain. So things are going to start looking slightly distorted. You'll see the silhouettes of cars exiting the tunnel on the other side, and it's going to seem a little bit strange. Everything seems a little surreal, for lack of a better word. And sometimes it lasts a while, sometimes it's just a mere seconds, and some people don't seem to have that experience at all when entering a tunnel. But that's just a small example of what it's a demonstration, rather, of what's happening in our brains when we have some kind of a moment where there's a drastic change in our senses, sensory input. So all of that being said, we can't say for certain that animals are having a religious experience, but we do know that they do have that sense of awe. They do experience that same sense of awe that we do. Whether or not that's translated into spiritual or not, it depends how you define spiritual. And we do know that they engage in ritual, which is something that we often think is uniquely human. But the forefront of this exploration, of this study, is taking a very exciting new turn with the help of AI. And I think this is probably one instance where the use of AI is actually a good thing. I don't know if I'm necessarily a fan of artificial intelligence in the current set of applications that it's being utilized for. But as far as using it to decode animal language, I find that wildly fascinating. So there's another elephantologist, again, I don't know if that's the right word for it, who has, her and her team, her colleagues, have amassed thousands of separate little utterances from elephants, and they've been able to identify some of them. Like they figured out, this is not using AI at this point, but before AI, they were able to figure out that elephants have unique names, that they give each other unique names, and they were able to discern that through analysis of the different calls they've collected. But using AI, they're beginning this group of researchers are entering all of the known utterances from elephants into an AI algorithm, a large language model that is going to help them to apparently the benefit of a large language model is that it can pick up nuances in the vocalizations that are not readily apparent to researchers, where it would take researchers probably decades to figure something out. The AI can do it in minutes to hours. And so they're hoping to get to the point where they can use this algorithm and train it sufficiently to where they can more or less decode what animals are saying to each other. My prediction is that, as exciting as it is, it's going to be surprisingly mundane. Animal communications, most of their communications are largely centered around resource allocation, or the aversion of danger. Because all the animals we know of besides us are still in the food chain. So these things matter greatly, as they used to us, but we've managed to pull ourselves out of the food chain, and we're kind of a unique species in that regard, so we're able to explore other forms of dialogue and deeper thoughts on different subjects that our animal compatriots don't have the luxury of doing. But I know animals will probably surprise us with the kind of humor that they have. But here's the other problem. Here's a problem that using a large language model is facing, and that most animals, while they have audible vocalizations, they also their communication involves a lot of nonverbal communication as well, nonverbal cues, such as like birds would have certain wing flap formations or patterns, or feather ruffling, or different animals have just different ways of adding to their communication. Bees, for example, we know do kind of a directional shuffle that tells other bees where the location of food is. So it's going to be difficult to feed that information into a large language model. Let's see, if a meme, according to Dawkins, is the smallest unit of culture that is transmissible, then there must be a word for the smallest unit of communication that conveys meaning, that has meaning. I don't know what that word is, but maybe something like co-meme, co for communication, where it includes a unit. A co-meme would include anything from a vocalization to any other kind of sound or bodily motion that is used to convey a meaning. And so if there's a way to get co-meme information into an AI model, a large language model, then I think we could better decipher what animals are saying to each other. And that might lead to what they might be communicating regarding religious or spiritual feelings or spiritual experiences, and their thoughts on the dying of a loved one, and their thoughts on ritualistic behaviors. And it might be the case that spiritual experiences are so impactful that they don't have language for those things. I bet we're going to find that the animal language is extremely limited. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to be focused just around avoiding danger and finding food, and also, of course, finding mates. And I think that it's still exciting, though, to uncover that. They should call it Project Doolittle, for those of you who are familiar with the Dr. Doolittle series of books. I read those when I was little, where Dr. Doolittle was able to speak with animals. But to think that our future could be one where we are understanding our animal friends a little bit better. So I'm going to keep close watch on this particular subject because it fascinates me. So if in the future we do discover that animals do have this a very distinct sense of religion, then that of course means that religion is an instinct that we developed, and is possibly, like a lot of our instincts, it aids in survival in some way. I know the idea of the fight or flight response to being in awe of something, it makes sense from a natural selection point of view and a survival point of view. To fear something or to have a very visceral response to a large stimuli, it makes sense evolutionarily, but it could be more than that. It doesn't make sense necessarily to mourn the dead. So when animals take the time to ritualistically adorn the graves of their fallen loved ones and family, like, I don't readily see how that would be an evolutionary advantage. It could be just one of those coattail effects where certain behaviors are not necessarily directly involved with survival, but they could be side effects of other traits, other behaviors that do aid in our survival. So that remains to be seen. I'm excited about the large language model use. Again, it's the only use of AI that I would approve of. And that's probably because I just don't know a lot about AI. Maybe I'm just being ignorant. Maybe AI is going to change the world for the better. I don't know. That's going to do it for today's episode. I'm Charlotte, and you are watching The Ugly Atheist. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.